Hello, I'm ShieldWall100 and welcome back to my channel for the third installment in my How to Play the Batman Miniatures game series of videos. I produced some starter scenarios based upon the contents of the new Batman starter box, based upon the 2022 film of the same name, and Night Models has been kind enough to make them kind of official and publish them, so figured I'd do some accompanying videos to go with them. Again, all using the starter contents of that starter box, so lovely jubbly. And yeah, this is the third scenario. You should have checked out 1 and 2 if you're looking for a breakdown on how to play, because I'm going to try not to dwell on things which we've learnt before in order to maintain brevity in the old videos there. But there's plenty of new things to teach you today. Well, plenty. There's 2 main items, but one of them's a bit of a biggie, so we'll be getting into that just shortly. But as you can see, this is the board we'll be using today, and the third scenario, interestingly, doesn't really have much in the way of specified scenery setups, I don't think, unless they've changed the wording since I saw it. Haha. But no, I deliberately kept it a bit more open, so you can use whatever's in your collection. You don't have to have roads and buildings and cars and things. It says you can use a park or industrial scape. If you've got your old 40k scenery, then this is a particularly dilapidated area of Gotham, but hey, you know, everything's possible, isn't it? Yeah, so I mean, as you can see, this is like set up a little bit more open than I'd normally like for my boards. There's a bit more open space, but really, to be perfectly honest, in this game you can get away with an awful lot of different types of setup, really. Because don't forget, the darkness rule that we discussed in the second scenario basically means no matter how much cover's on the board, generally speaking, you can't be seen more than 12 inches away anyway, so that's fair enough, right, isn't it? Right, okay, we're going to move on now. I'm going to go into the deployment whatnot of this third scenario, and we'll get into some of the special rules. See you in just a moment. Okay, right, here we go with the starting crews. I'll just go through them. There's 5 models a piece in this particular third scenario, so if you're playing along, then you're going to be using Chief Mackenzie Bock, Officer Martinez, not Vasquez, I think this is Officer 1, and Officer 2 now. She's a new one, along with Mackenzie Bock there. You haven't used these before. And of course, last but not least, the mounted officer. Yeah, actually, I never actually worked out this model. Once you assemble him, he is awesome. Hang on, sorry, because when you see him this way, he looks kind of a bit derpy really in terms of proportions, but when you see he's really leaning into the swerve there, this whole thing makes a lot more sense. And sorry, I just thought I'd point that out, because I thought it was a bit of an odd one in the screenshots, but when you actually see it in the resin, so to speak, gorgeous model, gorgeous. Why did I doubt them? I didn't, but you know, I thought it was a bit weird anyway. Anyway, okay, so these are the 5 models you'll be using for this particular scenario, if you're sticking to the ones I'm using. And on the organised crime side, we're sticking with Penguin, and we've got the 3 bouncers, 1, 2 and 3, and the Mafia dude, what's he called? Mafia Thug, yes, sorry, Mafia Thug. Okay, so 5 aside, and these are the forces we're going to be going for. Haven't toted them up in terms of points. I don't know if they're particularly fair, shall we say, but this is a starter scenario, and it's not really about a points game. The victory conditions for this one are very much not down to points or anything like. Well, not down to the starting reputation cost points of the crews, you know. So never mind. Okay, right. So these are your models. Okay, take time if you get a chance to familiarize yourself with any new traits you need to look at, you know, in terms of this, you know, on each of the character cards. There's not too many this time, I think you'll find, and some of the models you've used just now. So for example, the Penguin you should have a better idea of anyway, and there's just some odd bits and pieces. Once again, anything relating to let's say drawing cards and things like that, you can leave. You don't have to worry about. You'll find that they're not necessary, so if anything doesn't make sense from the rules we're going to be trying out, don't panic. There's still a little bit to go, so you're just looking at things which affect, you know, especially deployment and things, special actions that affect movement and combat, and anything that affects the opponent, you know. So there you go. Alright, so I think we're going to move on now just to the setup of the game, because we're actually going to start deploying Funky now. The previous introductory scenarios just had their own rules for deployment of your crews and things like that set up, because they were simple scenarios to get you into it. We're actually in this third one going to start using a simplified version of the actual Batman Miniatures game deployment rules, which involves things not just putting down your crews, but also determining where you actually put them, but also the placement of what's called street furniture. And for this means we're going to be first of all need to do deployment called deployment initiative, where you take a die per side. We're going to do the boys in blue with the blue die and organised crime with the white. That's a draw, so re-roll. Okay, and there you go, a 6-3. So the Batman crew, the Gotham PD, they have deployment initiative. Okay, so when I say street furniture, we're only using one item of that this time, and we're using things called street lamps. Okay, so if you recall from the previous scenario, we had the night rule where you couldn't see further than 12 inches away in Gotham because it's always night there, and in the case of the film it's also raining as well. But for purposes of the miniatures game, you also have things called light sources or street lamps. Okay, and that's what these counters represent. Both crews put down 2, starting with the player with the deployment initiative. And what these counters do, if you pop them down on the board, is they illuminate an area of 4 inches around them, which cancels out the night rule nearby. Okay, it's quite cool. Right, so looking at the 2 crews, usually the crew that has more guns wants to put these markers in areas where they're going to influence the board an awful lot, whereas other crews would like to sneak around in the shadows or basically just have a range disadvantage, might just want to keep these out of the way. So looking at it, actually the Gotham PD for once has less guns than the than the other crew. Can be a very shooty crew sometimes, but not in this case with these models. So they're going to put their first one around the corner at the back here. Okay, this is before we worked out where everyone's starting as well. So they're just generically trying to put it out of the way. So now it's time for the organised crime crew to put one down, and they're going to choose to put it over here, where it is in the middle of the board. It's going to cover the most people, basically. That's what they're planning anyway, hoping for. Right, the rules for it are that you can't put one lamp post within 8 inches of another one, and they've got to be at least 2 inches away from the board edges. So there you go. I'm sort of guesstimating at this point because I've got one hand holding a camera. So there you go. Right, back to the police. They're going to put their second one down here. Okay, sort of out the way again, and further than 2 inches into the board. Over to the organised crime crew, again trying to keep theirs central because I don't exactly know. I think it's going to be about there. Yep, there you are. I'll do a bit of a measuring around just to see if I need to move them apart a little bit after I've done the shot, but that's going to be in that rough region there. Okay, so that's 2 each. That would normally be the end of it, and you'd move on to any other items of street furniture there might be, but for the purpose of this scenario we're only doing lampposts. But if you look at Chief Mackenzie Bock's traits, he does get to place another street lamp down. Okay, it's his public resources, I think it is. Special rule, is that what it's called? Yes, public resources. Sorry, had a quick look. So if you look that up, you'll see he gets an extra lamppost. Okay, right. Oddly enough, in this starter set, there's only 4 lampposts. Bit of an oversight on their part, but we have plenty of similarly sized counters, which you can easily just fudge another one in for. So we're going to use this here weird venom container canister-looking thing, and again, they don't really need it, but they're just going to pop it down here. Okay. So in other games, this could be really crucial because you can use this Mackenzie Bock character with a much more shooty version of the Batman crew. Lots of police snipers and whatnot, and SWAT officers with nasty guns and things. You can really so you can get a lot of use out of light sources potentially. But I digress. Let's carry on now. So in terms of who's choosing deployment where, well, if you look at the scenario document, you'll see that basically the player with the deployment initiative chooses one of the 12 by 12 inch corners of the board. So you got 1, 2, 3, and 4 there. Sorry for the fast camera work, but yeah, they get to pick one, and they'll deploy in that, and the opponent deploys in the other. Well, since there's a police station over here, the GCPD are going to deploy in this corner over here, leaving the Penguin and the rest of the organised crime crew deploy over here. Okay, and that, I believe, takes us away from that. I need to quickly do something, and then I'll be back once I've set the models up. Okay, see you in just a moment. Okay, as I said, models are deployed and the police are up by their police station. As you can see, got Chief Bock, Officer 2, otherwise known as Stop Cop as I call her, and the mounted officer at the front, and Martinez and Officer Number 1 at the back in the corner. Well, that corner of my deployment zone anyway. Okay, and for organised crime, you got Penguin and the 3 bouncers as far forward in their deployment square as they could go, and Matthew Thug actually got a bit extra because he has the undercover trait, if you noticed, on his character card, so he gets to deploy 8 inches outside of his deployment zone, so he managed to sneak out a bit further in order to cause some havoc early on. Okay, right, before we get into the game, let's actually have a look at the victory conditions, see what we're actually playing to do, because it's not all about causing damage this time. Right. This game is basically our introduction to the objective card system, which is a really important, interesting sort of nuance for the Batman Miniatures game. Okay, so each side, according to the scenario document, has 4 objective cards. Okay, which would normally be part of a larger deck, but for the purpose of this scenario, we're taking 4 of each crew's objective cards, and in a 4-round game, the first crew to score all 4 of their objective cards, it will be the winner, okay, by the end of a turn. Alright? At the end of round 4, whoever has scored the most points according to those objective cards will be the winner if we don't have a clear winner before then, but likelihood is I think we will. Okay, so the objective card system, like I said, is one of the better, well, one of the really awesome things about this 3rd edition of the Batman Miniatures game. Sets it head and shoulders above the 1st and 2nd editions, if you ask me. Okay, just bear with me a second. I will be back in just shortly to explain how the objective cards work. Okay, see you in just a moment. Apologies for the quick break there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm nursing a bit of a poorly cat, and I thought she was just about to be sick in the corner of my games room. Joys. But no, we're all good. And so anyway, we got to a fairly natural break anyway, because I was just about to go into a breakdown of what the objective cards are. You've probably seen them around. If you've ever watched any of my my game reports on this channel, you'll notice that I wave these looking cards around in front of the camera, so no one can read them usually, and just to explain what's going on. But yeah, so the objective card system differentiates each crew. Each crew has a different set of cards, which determines their character, the flavour of how they score, what the sort of things they do. But let's just take some and get on with the game, shall we? So in the scenario document actually tells you which 4 cards to take from each crew, and I'm just going to take an example of one now. I'm going to pick it up for myself and put up a display on the screen now. Go editing, Shield Wall. Cool, right. This one's message job, okay? As you can see down the left-hand side of the screen, that's the name of the objective card itself. If you look at the top left, that's the number, the yellow number there, the big one, is the number of victory points it's worth. Okay, so when you score this card, it'll be worth 2 points. All right, yeah, cards generally range between 3 and there's some 1s in there as well. 2's kind of an average, obviously. The majority of cards, I think, score 2 points these days. Okay, moving down, you'll see the yellow box is where we're going to be focusing most of our attention, though. All right, the various parts of that. Right, so you see, you've got these 3 little icons here in the yellow box. The first one doesn't mean anything anymore. It's actually a bit of a throwback to an earlier version of the rules. It may well come back into meaning in later, little updates in the rules and things, but for now we can ignore that. It's just a symbol. This one's a gun. It could be a shield or an exclamation mark, but this one, no, don't worry about it for now. The second one is a Roman numeral. In fact, it could be 1, 2, 3, or 4, and that corresponds to phases within the round sequence. Okay, so you got take the lead, raise the plan, execute the plan, and the recount phases, which we've learnt about in previous scenarios. Right, so the number there represents which phase you play the card in. Okay, so there you go. So to set it out, so the third one for message job here represents the execute the plan phase, which is the one where you're moving around and activating your models and doing damage and putting down suspect markers and all sorts of things like that. It's actually I think it's probably the most common one you'll find on your cards, because it represents your models doing things or reacting to things. Okay, and the next one, the last little icon there, represents when you score the card. Okay, or how you score the card, and there's several symbols they could be. They can take a little while to learn them. Once you know them, they're really simple. One thing to say about all of this whole card mechanism is that it starts off kind of baffling, and I know it does. I remember how I felt when I first saw it, having come from this, the early editions of the game. But once you know what they mean, it's so simple. You get used to it really quickly. This little star, this little 4-pointed star sort of thing, means it's an instantaneous score. So if you meet the criteria on the card in the yellow box, and if we just read it now, an enemy model is removed as a casualty. So if you remove an enemy model, so if you do blood damage equal to or more than an enemy model's endurance value, you take it off the board. It's removed as a casualty, and you can play this card instantaneously to score 2 points. And as you can see, it would have to be done in the third phase of the game, wouldn't it? Because this generally the time you do the vast majority of your damage. Yeah, there's not much that can damage things outside of that phase. Maybe a bit of poison here and there, but apart from that, it's basically your models do damage to a money model, kill it, you get 2 points for it by playing this card. Okay, you can ignore the bit underneath that when it says when scored gain $100 black money. That's an organized crime thing. Don't worry about that. We're not worrying about that right now. But that's basically it for the purposes of the objective cards, in terms of what we're going to be looking at. So you're looking at the number of points it scores, and when it's played, when it scores, and what you actually need to do in terms of the criteria. Okay, and it's as simple as that, really. We're not going to worry about the writing in the white box underneath. That's for something else, that for next scenario probably. We're not going to worry about that now. We're just going to worry about the different ways that you can score. So if you want to have a look at when you get a chance, if you can bring them up on the app. If you have the actual box set in front of you, you can see the cards that I've specified in the scenario document, and just have a quick look and see how both crews will be scoring the 4 cards that they've got. I'll be going through them as the game progresses, because I feel that's a more natural way of doing it than me just giving you the whole lowdown now. It will slow things down a little bit at first, but don't worry, it'll speed up really quickly as we go on, and the game, I'm pretty sure, will run along pretty damn quick. Okay, right, I think that's basically it. If you want to take some time before you start just to have a quick look in the relevant part of the rulebook, as it says in the scenario document, just to get an idea as to what the different icons mean for when models score cards and things like that. If there's anything you're not sure about, then you can either wait till I get to it in the game itself, or you can just have a look it up and see it in the rulebook. Okay, right, I'm going to move on now, and we're going to start the first round of this game. Alright, see you in just a moment. Okay, slight change of camera angle, slight, in order to facilitate some shenanigans of mine. We're just going to take the lead phase of the first turn. My cat Toby has joined us. Hoorah! I'm keeping one eye on him, one on the recording. Good for me. Right, just to let you know, there's the model that Officer 1 has the Scout rule. If you remember from his trait listing, which means he gets a free move before the game starts proper. So before the take the lead phase of round 1. So he just moved down here. Okay, he's sneaking around the back of the I think it's the fried chicken joint on the other side. Yeah, right. So let's now move. Take the lead phase. Right. Okay. So we have. As before, boys in blue are the blue dice. Oh, it's a draw. Okay, we'll roll that again. Well, organised crime really wants to go first. Okay, right. So that's the take the lead phase. But I'm just going to walk back over because I just remembered I left the cards over this side, and it doesn't really matter now. I've shown you where Officer 1 is, where I stand. Right. So what I tend to do, just for the ease of my own little brain, is when I'm doing it with a game with objective cards in, is that as I go through, I check the cards I have available to me, and I check to see what phase they're played in, because you don't want to miss out on playing something that needs to be played in the first or second phases. If you look at the cards that you've got for this particular game, you'll notice that there are none that are played in the first phase. Okay, none with a little Roman numeral 1 in the when to play section. Okay, but there is one for the organised crime crew, which is played in the second phase, which is recovering the juice here. As you can see, it has a 2 on it there. Okay, and if we look at what it does, you play it now. Well, in the raise the plan phase, which we are now in, having completed take the lead. I play the cards before I do the business of the cards, basically, of the phase. Sorry. So right, target a friendly model. Here we are. May not be the boss. We don't have a boss as yet. So target any friendly model. That model reveals an enemy suspect and is still in the gaming area. Okay, and what that means is, if you look at when you score it. Okay, you see the the clock symbol there. That indicates the card is scored at the end of the phase, as long as you meet the criteria. So, if the model we select now reveals an enemy, a Batman crew suspect marker, and is still alive by the end of the turn, we'll get the lovely 3 points. Okay, so that's what this card means. Okay, so out of all 5 of the organised crime crew, bunch of models we've got here, the only one who looks like he might even vaguely have a chance at revealing enemy suspect is Matthew Thug over here, because he is the furthest forward, and therefore might just about get in range of 1 if the Batman crew is obliging for them anyway. Okay, so that's basically where we're at, and so we're going to choose Mafia Thug here to be the recipient of that card, recovering the juice. Okay, and you can mark him in some way if you want. I'm going to put a little marker on his I'm going to pop the card next to his character card, to be perfectly honest. For me, that's how I'm going to remember it for this particular turn. For this scenario, should this not score, should he not manage it for some reason, it could be that he gets taken out of the game or something, or maybe he just doesn't reveal a suspect marker. The card will return to the hand to be played again next turn. It's not that big a deal, so might as well pop it on him just in case. Alright, that's the only card of all the bunch that for either crew that can be played in this phase, so we're going to carry on with the raise the plan phase now. And organised crime crew won the initiative, so I usually say that they go first, and they need to choose who's going to get audacity. So going with that for him, obviously he'll need it. Penguin himself will get one. It's always a good idea to give the guy who can do the most audacity. Now it's really much a toss-up between who else gets it. We got a chap with a gun, he might as well, since he's got that extra bit of range. But really, there's no one else with a special action or anything like that could really use it. So we're going to go with, let me see, we'll go with the guy with the knuckle dusters. We'll leave the chap with the baseball bat out to dry for this first round. Okay, and for the cops phase, we're going to pop a audacity on Chief Bock, stop cop, the mounted officer, and because I can reach him, Martinez at the back. There you go. Right, and that concludes the second phase. Alright, so that's the raise the plan, take the lead phase is done for the first round. We're now going to move on into the third phase, execute the plan for round number 1, and I'm actually going to cut now, start moving, and then I'll recount to you as it goes, because that's much easier for editing and much easier for me explaining to you what we do as we go along. And you guys know how movement and combat when placing suspects and revealing suspects works by now, so don't need to do a blow-by-blow account of that anyway. Okay, right, well, I'm going to get on with it. Penguin's crew, organised crime, will be activating first. Well, the organised crime crew kicked off and they just went with bouncer number 2, the guy who didn't have audacity. Since he only has one action he can do, he just decided to move up into the middle of the road, so he can wield that baseball bat a little bit more threateningly. And that basically concludes his activation for now. So we're going to go to the Batman crew, or what we call the police. So there's no part, neither side has any passes because they've both got the same number of models, so on we go. Well, likewise, not activating the models with audacity to keep it a bit cagey at the start, the Batman crew activated Officer 1. He's already done his move from before the game because he did scout, so he opted instead, since he's out of his deployment zone, to pop down a suspect marker, which he pops down in base contact with himself just there on the board edge. And as you can see, the activation counter there is the little tick just to indicate that he's already moved, so no one gets too confused. Sometimes you can have high model count games and you can actually get confused as to who's been and who hasn't in a given turn. Anyway, right, gonna move back now. Organised crime in the offing. Bouncer 3, the one with the automatic gun, activated next, as you can see, and he's just moved out of the deployment zone and popped down a suspect marker of his own. He would have lost too many dice and is a bit too far away to do any effective shooting with his pistol at this range, so he's going to pop down a suspect marker. I get asked a lot of questions, a lot of people who are starting the game, well, what on earth are suspect markers actually for? Why would you put them down and stuff? Basically, it's most of the time it's because you once you understand how these here cards work and stuff, they tie in a lot with that, and quite often it's worth putting them down just to tease your opponent or something, because sometimes your opponent needs them to be able to score their cards, or it might be it's because it reacts with your cards. If you read up on some of the objective cards in the sets, in fact some of the ones that we've got out today, you'll see they revolve around messing around with enemy suspect markers and things, so you use them to to help to entice the enemy to score points off you, and in other words, help them to score you to score points off them too. Okay, and that's why he popped down a suspect marker here. Okay, because there's certain things we need to do in order to get this game going, and suspect markers, not only that, they also some suspect markers activate around various traits. They give various different crews in different ways, as you find out if you play the game or watch my battle reports. Hint, hint, hint. Okay, that's that for organised crime. Going to move back now to the Batman crew. Officer Martinez was elected to go next. He had audacity, so multiple things available for him. He was back here, remember. So first of all, he used his tactical action to pop down a suspect marker. He's got the detective trait, which allows him to place it within 3 inches as opposed to in base contact. So even though he was sitting in his deployment zone, he could pop it down here, just about out of the 2 inches deployment zone. So there you go. He popped it down there. He then moved and went 5 inches and 3 up here, and that basically completes his activation. He can't use his special action, and so that's not an option for him, but that does complete Martinez's go. Right, okay, let's carry on. Matthew Thug really didn't want to pussyfoot around anymore. He has audacity, as you can tell. He moved first, so he moved around to here, and then he used his special action, Hitman, which you'll see on his character card, which basically enables him to use the program objective card as if an enemy had actually just revealed a suspect marker, but he has to play it on an enemy within 8 inches. Well, he's within 8 inches of Officer Martinez, so he did, and if we look at the program quickly, here it is. You should have it, hopefully, if you have the set. Right, so it's played in the 3rd phase, and that's a good old tick mark for me here. When an enemy model reveals a suspect, well, the Hitman rule means that he doesn't have to worry about that. So pick an enemy model, effectively, mark it in some way. So Officer Martinez is marked. When that model is removed as a casualty, they can score this card. So you see the timer, you see the score timer sort of icon next to the Roman numeral 3 there. That sort of diamond, half-filled diamond, shall we say, it represents this scores as and when it stays active until it's successfully scored. So now basically they've chosen Officer Martinez. Once he dies, they will score the 2 points and score this card. Okay, and that's as simple as that. Okay, so he's marked. They don't like Officer Martinez or something. Maybe his uncle put in a bad carpet for them or something. Right, let's. So after that was his special action. He still had his tactical action left. He could have popped down a suspect marker, but he elected to attack. He's got 3 rounds on that shotgun of his, and he used it to open fire on Officer Martinez. Now he moved, so he'd normally lose a bunch of dice, etc, etc, but because it has the assault rule on the shotgun, instead of losing dice, he can move and shoot, but he's at -1 on the attack dice. So he rolled these dice. The white dice is the strength die, and the blue dice is the attack die. It's rate of fire 1. So this is all stuff from previous scenarios, so hopefully you guys will know what I'm talking about. This was the die roll, and with the firearm rule, the strength die here definitely caused a hit, and even at -1, a 4 is sufficient to hit with the attack die. So that's 2 hits on Officer Martinez with a shotgun, and each one doing 2 points of blood and a stun damage, meaning that 4 points of blood, with light reflection, 4 points of blood and a stun have been inflicted upon the brave officer here. It's not enough to kill him, but it's pretty close. Yeah, so that's pretty nasty. I'll be transferring those onto his character card in just a moment, at which point he's marked for death, and he's hurting quite a bit. But that concludes the activation. Sorry for the fairly onerous rules explanation there, but I thought it was important for people getting into the game. Okay, right, that's that, and we're going to move back to the Batman crew. They must be smarting. Officer 2, aka Stop Cop, activated next, and she was over here. First of all, she had audacity, so she looked at what she had available to her. Her special action she used is stop or halt on the mafia thug here, and basically that means that what she does, she picks an enemy model within 8 inches of line of sight. Well, he's definitely in line of sight, and he's illuminated as well by the lantern, so even if he was a bit further away, then she'd be able to see him. But yeah, 8 inches line of sight, that was easily covered. And they take an opposed willpower test, and that basically means it's a willpower test, except the Stop Cop rolls the dice, so rolls 3 dice. That's her special. This is the score. She needs to pick 2 of these, and she has to hope that she exceeds the model's willpower value for this particular trait. So she obviously picks these 2, and that does exceed the willpower value of 4 for the mafia thug. Okay. So he has been effectively stopped. I guess she blew her whistle, and it's made the marrow freeze in his bones or something. But basically, the upshot of that is it gives him -1 defense until the end of the round, so his defense 2 instead of 3, and -4 inches movement as well. Not that the -4 inches movement will be a problem for him since he's already had his turn, but it does make him a bit easier to take down for the remainder of the Batman crew. Right, having done that, yeah, that's sorry, there's a counter that shouldn't be there just yet. My bad. She then decided she was going to move down and put down a suspect marker using her tactical actions. So that's all 3 of her actions used for the turn. The suspect marker, these are double-sided in the set. This is proves it's a suspect marker. She's actually played it. It's a special one because she is playing. Let's pick it up. The Snitch from the objective cards list. This is a card you will see a lot of if you're playing against the Batman crew, and yes, you get used to it basically. It's a lovely 3-pointer, and I've explained it many times. Plays it now and it will score potentially the end of the turn. Remember, that's what these symbols in the top left mean. Okay. Place a suspect marker designated a snitch, which is why it's got the fancy decorations on the other side to remind you that it's a snitch and not just an ordinary suspect marker. Basically, it means it can't be taken off the board, can't be revealed or removed for any reason. If at the end of the round there are no enemy models within 4 inches of the snitch marker, the Batman crew will score the card. Okay, so this is a good reason why she moved over here and then put the snitch down, because there's very little that the organised crime crew will be able to do about that particular issue themselves. Okay, because they haven't got jetpacks, they ain't getting over there, and she is not a particularly offensively minded character, so she can be withdrawn safely to do this 3-pointer instead. All right, so that concludes her activation, and we're going to move now back to organised crime. Bouncer 1 had a particularly boring day. He just moved up, popped down a suspect marker, and that is him done and dusted. There wasn't much else he could do at this range against enemies. His punching gloves are not in there, not available right now. Okay, we're going to carry on now. Okay, right. Well, bit of a big one this time. Like the mounted officer activated. Okay, had audacity. He used his quite prodigious 14-inch move to get into contact, well, get into punching range of the Mafia thug. Don't forget he's got reach 1 on that extendable baton, so he can strike from a bit further away, but you know, you don't have to. You can he's just around the area, so he thought he'd get in a bit closer. Right, he battered Mafia thug. Okay, right, so lots happened. The Mafia thug put 1 point of effort in to reduce the dice pool, but then extendable baton mounted officer put in 2 points himself. The dice were rolled. The Mafia thug is only defense 2, so many hits were scored, including a 6 on the strength die, which would be a critical hit. Overall, it caused 9 points of stun damage, including the effort overall, which is more than enough to KO Mafia thug, as I'm sure you'll notice if you look. Okay, right, this triggered something. The organised crime crew could now play pinched mobster, because you can play, the fun thing I haven't actually mentioned, you can play objective cards, and indeed some have to be played in the opponent's activations. Okay, so here you go. It's a phase 3 card, and the scoring happens at some weird point in the future, which you'll say in here. So when a friendly model takes damage from an attack, well, Mafia thug certainly just did, place an event marker in contact with it. So this is the event markers from the starter box, these funky little triangles with a tick in, I guess. That's an event marker, so there it is. Okay, a model either side may manipulate the marker to move it 4 inches, okay, and it will score if the marker is employed the organised crime crew's deployment zone. So organised crime crew now has to move this pinched mobster marker back into their deployment zone in order to score 3 points. Bit of an ask considering how far it is away, but you know, they had to get it out on the board at some point, and didn't seem that the Batman crew was playing fair by staying around here, so you take your chances where you can get them, so they went for it. Okay, so that is now on the board. Okay, Mafia thug is now unconscious. Now the mounted officer still has his special action left, and if you notice, he's got what's something called the arrest trait, which is a special action. If he's in base contact with an enemy model, he will which is unconscious, such as Mafia thug is, he can use his special action to arrest him, which effectively removes him as a casualty, slaps the cuffs on him. The horse slaps the cuffs on him, and that takes the model off the board. And canny viewers amongst you will notice that this enables the Batman crew to immediately play in one of their cards, get them off the streets. So as you can see, it's an instant, and it's arrest a model, which they've just done. They have arrested a model. It's quite a factor in Batman crew crews, basically, having the ability to arrest. So they were confident enough to give them cards, and it's a good 3 points to score. So that is a scored card. I'm going to pop that face down by the side of the board in a little pile I've got for them, and that is a successful turn for the mounted officer. The only thing to mark Mafia thug's passing is the pinched mobster event marker. Okay, right, that's that. We're going to move off this now. Got to finish up the game, finish up the turn. I think we've got the penguin to go. Oz is up, and yep, he moved. First of all, he moved up to here, and then he used his special action to say drop it to the mounted officer there. That's a special action, and what it meant is an opposed willpower roll was made, this time against the mounted officer, and he just failed. Basically, it forces the mounted officer to pop down a suspect marker of his, so that's a Batman crew suspect marker in contact. Okay, because you got to, at the end of the day, it might be necessary for the organised crime crew to be able to score it anyway, to score some of their cards, should I say. Next, Penguin used one of his 2 rounds of ammunition to open fire on the mounted officer, and hit with all 3 of his dice. He would normally get 5, including the strength die. However, because he moved before firing, he loses 2. It did bring him into range and line of sight, and took cover away and stuff like that. So he got a net bonus in dice overall for moving up. But yeah, 3 hits caused 6 points of blood damage to the mounted officer, which I thought would then be taking him up as a casualty and allowing them to score the message job objective. But no. Mounted officer has 7 points of endurance. So he's again another Batman crew model, perilously close to death. But yeah, no, this one's still on the board, and but albeit heavily damaged. And to round things off, Chief Mackenzie Bok activated. He moved forwards down here. It would have been fun to have, you know, allowed him to start firing and shooting and stuff, but he just doesn't get really enough dice to justify the use of the ammunition, so he's just going to move to here. And then he used his crucial information special trait to move the new suspect marker that the Penguin forced the mounted officer to put down. He can move a suspect marker up within 8 inches up to 4 inches. If that makes sense. It doesn't. He picked this one, he moved it 4 inches is what he did, and he's moved it away from the Penguin's men, because yeah, obviously the Penguin need to get to that to reveal it to score one of their objective cards, and that ain't happening on Mackenzie's watch if he can help it. So there you go. That concludes a full round of activations, including objectives and suspect markers, and there's still some violence going on. You see the balancing act you got to play between the two aspects. So yeah, we're going to carry on into the recount phase and whatnot now. I'll come back in just a second and we'll go over who scored what over the course of the turn. Okay, back in a sec. Okay, right, recount phase in round 1. So let's go over what happened. So right, every model that could take off 1 point of stun because it was still alive and conscious, so that would be Martinez and the mounted officer, both took off 1 point of stun damage. Okay, they're both on 1 left. They're both done having taken 1. Don't forget they can't take off any of that accrued blood drop damage, the proper damage. So yeah, they're still flaggingly close to death. Nasty. Right, in terms of who scores which cards, so as we already know, Get Them Off the Streets was already scored earlier in the turn by the Batman crew. The Snitch over here is still unmolested by organised crime crew models, so the Snitch here will score at the end, and that means that this Snitch then reverts to being an ordinary suspect marker for the purposes of the game. Okay, and so it can now be picked up and moved around and all sorts of things. Okay, but it doesn't score any more points. It's done its job. Right, finally I'm going to have to move around for the Batman crew. Excuse me for the shaky cam. Right, the Secure the Perimeter is a card that is played in the 4th phase. That's right now, and it's an instant score. Remove 2 friendly suspect markers within 2 inches of the board edge. I'm guessing that's any board edge really. So this these 2 here are within 2 inches of the board edge. We pick them up to remove them, and that scores another 2 points for the Batman crew. So that is 3 of their 4 objective cards that they have scored. So yeah, it's a scary thing playing the Batman crew. They do tend to rattle out their scores at short notice. As you'll see, as it is, the actual the organised crime crew, as far as I'm aware, haven't scored any of their cards. They've got them out, they're on the board perhaps, but they haven't scored them. So for example, the Pinch Mobster is still there, needs transporting back to the deployment zone. Message Job hasn't been scored because they just failed to kill anyone, unfortunately for them. Officer Martinez is marked on the program, but as he's still up, they haven't scored that one yet. And finally, of course, Recovering the Juice was played on Mafia Thug, and he did not get to reveal enemy suspect markers, so they failed that one. They'll need to try that one again next turn. The organised crime crew, it has been said that they are not very good because their cards are harder to score. I disagree. I just find them more of a marathon instead of a sprint, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, and that will be borne out if you actually play the game. I have played plenty of games with the organised crime crew, and they can really rack up the scores. It just takes a bit longer. They have a lot more slow burn cards that all come good at the same time, whereas the Batman crew just has some noticeably easy scores and then some not so easy scores. But hey, that's a whole theory crafting thing, not for an introductory scenario, Lee. So let's carry on now. We've done the recount phase, so plenty of work for the organised crime crew to go. There is one further Batman crew objective card that they need to get. The organised crime crew are going to try and stop them from doing that whilst also obtaining their own, but they have put some work in towards there, so we'll just see. Okay, and if not, we'll just have some fun. Alright, Batman crew is already up on models, so the organised crime crew will be getting a pass in the next turn to use at their will, but let's see how it goes. I'm going to move on into round number 2 now and see how this shindig goes. Okay, and it's a slight change up from last turn. I've actually already completed the first 2 phases of round 2. This is how I usually fill my battle reports. I find it easier to recount than do it as I go, because I might forget things if I do it as I go. Right, so we first of all did the take the lead phase. No cards had to be played in that phase, as you recall. The actual initiative roll was made, and organised crime won the initiative again. So they'll be going first this round. Okay. In terms of raise the plan, the organised crime crew had to play recovering the juice, this card here. Once again, they had to choose one of their models who they were nominating to hopefully pick up a suspect marker and also stay alive to the end of the turn. So they went with this bouncer here for this one. He's going to try and do the biz, shall we say. Right, now who's got Audacity? Well, there's 4 models left in the organised crime crew, so that made it rather simple. Everyone gets Audacity. For the Batman crew, it wasn't too much harder really. They still got 5 models, but it's all the ones you can see have Audacity. So Stop Cop, Chief Bock, the mounted officer, and Martinez. The guy around the back of the HFC there, he does not have Audacity because he's a little bit too far away to probably do anything with it anyway. Okay, that's that for the Audacity placement and everything like that. We are now going to move to the activations phase, execute the plan, that is. We're going to see if this game lasts longer than another round. Right, let's see. Oz took no mess this time, and he activated first for the organised crime crew. He first of all ordered the mounted officer to drop it once again, putting down another suspect marker. He got up onto the he then opened fire on the mounted officer and killed him with every single die hitting at close range. Obviously didn't hit the horse at all, just the rider. It's enough to kill the mounted officer though, and then he moved up there. The actual act of killing the officer scored message job for the organised crime crew. Instant score, enemy model moved as a casualty. They finally got one. So there you go. Was desperately trying to think of ways to make this better for him, in terms of if he could just have he could have got into sight of Martinez and killed him too. However, the mounted officer is very fast, and all he needs to do is get round to one of these suspect markers and pick it up, and there would be good night Vienna for the organised crime crew. So that mounted officer really had to go, but whilst doing so, needed to get him to put down a suspect marker as well. So there you go. Okay, that concludes the organised crime crew's turn, should I say, and we're going to get back to the Batman crew. Officer Martinez shrewdly realised that he was going to be next on the menu in terms of who's getting shot at, because he is 1 point away from death and only has he has the program hanging over his head, which is a 2-point score for the organised crime crew. He was here. He opened first. He had his full suite of actions. So he activated his he used his tactical action to fire his gun at Penguin. He rolled to hit and did hit twice. The Penguin used an effort to bodyguard those hits off onto this guy over here. It's good to be in charge, I guess. He had to put an effort in to do that though, so there you go. Okay, having done that, Officer Martinez cowardly custodied out behind the police station, just to make it even harder for the Penguin crew, the organised crime crew, should I say, to score their cards. Right, well, let's see what they can do about that next. Bouncer 1 activated. He was back here. He used his Audacity first to move over to here, and he's using his tactical action to pick up this suspect marker. Don't forget, he needs to do that for his recovering the juice. So he reveals the enemy suspect marker. He's also in base contact with the pinched mobster, so in future turns, in a game where there would be, assuming there are no future turns, that is, I mean, maybe there will be, maybe there won't, I don't know. He can start manipulating the pinched mobster as well. It's that sort of foreplanning that can actually save you quite a lot of doohickying around later on. And yeah, so there you go. You get used to that kind of thing the more you play again. It's kind of a learning curve. But yeah, there you go. That's him done and dusted. He can't attack, don't forget. He first of all, even if he had a melee, even if he had a shooting weapon, because using your tactical action to manipulate suspect markers foregoes your attack. So there you go. Got to weigh up what you want to do. Stop Cop activated next, and she moved over here. Now she has audacity. She doesn't have any weapons at all, but she did use her special action to halt or stop this thug successfully with that mighty roll, using the 6 and the 3 there to exceed his willpower to give him -1 defense and -4 inches on his move. Not that he'll be moving again, but -1 defense till the end of the round. Okay, the baseball bat thug, bouncer, shall I say, activated. He realised he was in the melee range of Mackenzie, so he went in and attacked him in close combat. Both sides put in a point of effort. Unfortunately, it was not sufficient. No hits got through. The strength die whiffed, and Mackenzie passed all of his defence rolls to block all the incoming attacks. So there you go. Not much happened for the thug this time. It's over to the Batman crew now. See what they can do. Well, on that note, Bok activated. I suddenly noticed that models can move a bit further than I thought. I must have had some sort of time-space anomaly going on, because I suddenly realised that he could move around here, and of course when I then looked at his traits and saw that he had the detective trait, everything made a lot more sense. Right, so I moved Mackenzie Bok around here with his movement action. He has audacity, of course, so he can still has his tactical action, and with the detective trait he can manipulate a suspect marker from up to 3 inches away, so he will, even though he can't get into base contact with it, he's able to pick up and reveal this suspect marker from the organised crime crew. In doing so, he can score comb through everything. The last card that the Batman crew needed to score for 2 points. It's an instant reveal an enemy suspect marker. Super easy. The remaining text on that is to do with if you've got a hand of cards to draw from in the normal run of things. You don't actually play that in this particular scenario, so it's all good. Okay. So that's the last Batman crew objective card scored. So I think we might call it there, because it's pretty apparent that there's not much else that's going to happen. We still have this one model down here. He could potentially move and shoot someone a bit, and even if he could kill someone, there's nothing that they can really score. He can't get in sight of Martinez, who's hiding you can just about see him behind the door, behind the police station there. And there's still the other let's just go around to see him, the last officer over here as well, Officer 1. He had a pretty uneventful game, but he did nonetheless help to score that first card, the secure the perimeter card, sorry, for the Batman crew. So yeah, that concludes this game. I think it's the end of by the end of round 2, the Batman crew would have scored all 4 of their cards. Meanwhile, the organised crime crew would have scored message job, and they would have scored recovering the juice, because there's this model will have been alive to in order to qualify for scoring this card, and he did pick up a suspect, but saw comfort for them because Officer Martinez was still alive, and Pinch Mobster, sadly for them, is still over here. Okay, yes, so there you go. This is like I said, this is an introductory scenario to get people used to how the objective cards work and the differences in the ways that things you can be asked to do to score them. Yeah. For the organised crime crew, that was a bit of a bad day. I have actually played it, I've done some practice runs of this game, and it's actually usually been a bit closer. It usually favours, I will say, it favours the Batman crew a bit because of the way their cards are structured. They're more sort of suited towards this kind of, just like this quick pick-up sort of game. They don't have complicated things to do, but nonetheless, it's a good demonstration, is what I feel. It's important thing is you're learning, not so much. It's a completely balanced game. I mean, obviously, if you're really intensely competitive, see how many you score as you play as one crew, and then switch sides. That's the time-honoured classic, isn't it? But yeah, in the end of the day, yeah, try it out. If you want to play this a bit more, do variations of the scenario, I'd recommend just trying out different cards from within the objective deck to get used to them individually. If you want to play this scenario again and again, you can run this through pretty quickly when you know what you're doing. It doesn't use a tremendous amount more of the basic rules at all, just the objective cards, and once you get your head around how the scoring works, you're away really. You can just keep going and going, and if you've got different crews, you can just run different, variations on this scenario with a few models from any crews you want really, and just take some interesting looking cards and see if you can get them scoring, etc. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this introductory scenario. If you've got any questions about something I did did or didn't do. Bear in mind that I'm not playing super competitively. I'm just trying to do a game which sort of shows you how the interactions work. Things you want to take away from this, of course, is that you've got to weigh up whether you sprint out of combat to score objectives, or whether you stay in combat to win the combat, and thus giving yourself potentially more chances to score cards later on. Because you've got to bear in mind there is a bit of a balance in this game between damaging your opponent or defending yourself and scoring points. You know, you can't often do both at the same time. There's obviously exceptions, you know, as we saw even today, but nonetheless, generally speaking, that's the toss-up that's the weighing up you've got to do, you know. Some crews, organised crime included, do very well at damaging the opponent, thus impeding their ability to score cards. Okay, so you know you've got to bear that in mind. So even if you think organised crime crew might be weaker, maybe they are for this scenario, but overall it does tend to balance out in my experience once both players know what they're doing. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this game. As I already said, should get back on track. Leave a comment if there's anything that I missed or anything you want explained at all. I'll be back to do more introductory scenarios, I hope, if they continue to publish them. That'd be great. And and I'll definitely back for more game reports, just general ones for the Batman bought miniatures game as well, and other games too. And thank you very much. My name's Shieldwall100, and I'll see you next time. Ta-da!